Hey, and welcome back to Kayla J's Gospel Hour right here on WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming live at WURDradio.com. Listen, folks, we've been in our purpose series talking about how does this purpose thing really work? Because everybody always talking about, oh, is it your purpose? La la la, gotta have purpose. People go off on journeys, climbing mountains just to find their purpose. So, throughout this series for this month, we're going to be talking and breaking down what purpose is. We're going to be talking to people who I believe are walking in their purpose. And that brings me to today. I'm so excited to bring my friend, my sister, my WURD other half, the girl that I cut up with on a daily basis, none other than Words Own Sincerely Syreeta. Hey, girl, how you doing?
Hey girl, hey.
Hey.
That was a nice intro.
Oh, thank you. I had to give it up for you because you pipe me up every day. So now is my chance to pipe you up. You know. But before we even get into all that we want to talk about today in purpose, got to do a wellness check with you on a scale from 1 to 10 with all that's going on in this world and the global pandemic. How you feeling?
Ooh, 1 to 10. I'm probably at I would say a 7, a solid 7. Um, it's a lot going on in the world. It's a lot to process. Blessings still abound, thank you God. So yeah, I think I had to put it at a 7. Yeah.
Okay. Seven's not bad. Seven's not bad at all. Seven's not bad. Everybody has their days. Some people are 10, some people are ones. So we just thank God that you above 5. How about that?
Listen, if you're not above 5, just know that thankfully there are more days to come. That 5 day don't have to be the last day. You know, as long as you got the blessing upon you, you can keep moving forward. That don't your 5 day don't have to be the worst or the last day. So keep going.
That's right. I feel you. So we're
Mhm.
here to talk about purpose. Welcome to the Purpose series with Sincerely Syreeta and your girl Kayla J. Gotta ask you up front in your own words, what is purpose?
Okay. So I do think that the definition when you Google purpose is pretty aligned with how I view it. And the noun that comes up for it is the reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. Um, Purpose to me can always kind of be an interesting thing because if I think if we're speaking technically, none of us asked to be here. And so there is this moment of having to contend with the fact that to some degree you're experiencing something that you're not 100% sure you either know or remember signing up for, and yet you have to figure it out, and you have to align yourself or find those things that align with who and what you truly are, and what I believe is a spiritual being having a human experience. So purpose, that can get real layerful. um, but I would have to say if I had to go like with bare basic, just foundational understanding of purpose, I do think the definition serves it well. And with that, you decide where it goes from there. And that's at least how I operate with purpose, or how I've come to understand what purpose is and what it looks like.
No, that's good. I also love how you always, say that we're spiritual beings having this natural, this earthly experience because and when it all comes down to it, we're here to fulfill our spiritual purpose. We're on fleshly, we're flesh. We took on flesh and bone. I'm gonna say it like this: it's like Jesus did, but he came to fulfill a purpose. So we
Mhm.
here to do the same thing, fulfill our purpose. Uh,
Okay.
One reason why I really wanted to bring you on is because you have this artistic, creative. type of gift. And a lot of times in churches that get missed. You know, if
Mm.
you're not singing on a choir, or you're not a preacher, or you're not an usher, folks just tend to forget about those other gifts that God made. So being a creative, how does that make you feel? Like when you think about your gift and what God has gifted you in writing and in oratorical, how does that make you feel?
It's interesting to hear you share that because I sang in the choir. I, you know, I was the person who was in mime and hip hop and like all of those things in the church. My mother is a pastor, so like I grew up in the church, Baptist to be specific. And so I mean, we were in church 4 or 5 times a week. Like that was my life. It's funny to hear my mom share a bit like in different conversations that we have about how when I was a child, and early on in my childhood, even into my teenage years, like I would go into the bathroom and draw a bath and sit in the bath for hours with my Bible and a candle, and just like that's where I was at. That was my zone. Like I was just very thirsty for not just the word, but just that connection with my creator. And that was
Mhm.
my way of doing that. And so, um, you know, going into choir, I loved singing. Oh my gosh. I just felt like it was a direct connection between myself and my creator. And that was so important to me. And I think things changed a lot when I got pregnant at 16. And, I had to sit down from a lot of things. And that I think in some ways was very traumatizing because I didn't know how to then interpret my purpose. I didn't
Mm,
know what to mean for my purpose, because of how my life had unfolded and, whatever direction things had gone in, whatever decisions I had made that now I didn't have purpose, or now I'm not useful to the kingdom. Now I'm not like there were so many things that I was trying to figure out as a teenager that affected the way I felt about myself. And especially being a young Black woman in a Black church who is growing up in a world and specifically a nation, if we're talking about a country and we're putting some historical aspect, some layer of historical aspect like to that whole equation, of like not wanting to be a statistic, right? And so
mm,
what does it mean to kind of break through or to show up in spite of all of these things that are now associated with who I am and whatever my purpose can or cannot be anymore? Uh, that was a very kind of disorienting time for me to really process my value and my purpose through. I wasn't sure that, at least in that regard, on the church front, that I had any purpose anymore.
mm,
And I didn't know what to do with that. And so it was like, okay, let me take this passion, let me take um, you know, the way that I've shown up for my friends who are of, my faith, who are of the church. Like, let me take all of that care, all of that empathy, all of those things, and let me see how I can use that in the world. Let me see how I can use that in my career, in my profession, and let me see how I can use that in the degree that I choose. Like, let me just try to redirect that energy and make it worth something, because at that particular point in time, I didn't feel like it was worth anything anymore, through my religion, and that was a lot. It was a hurt piece. It was a hurt piece because I
imagine.
was so and so, connected and had some awesome youth pastors and head pastors that, really were pouring into our spirit and, just conditioning us to be able to, navigate life, as these spiritual beings having human experiences. And so, yeah, I don't know that that completely answers the question, but I know I didn't always feel like I had a clear understanding of a kind of purpose, that was continuous, that lasted, whether it was in the church or on the job or in the streets or in parenthood or, in your family. Like I came to really need this kind of continuum of like, no matter where I show up at and who I am, like my purpose is there regardless. The gifts that I have are valuable regardless. I think that came with age and understanding that.
Yeah, no, you answered the question perfectly about about how do you feel about your gift, about your purpose. Even though sometimes you felt that you didn't know what it was because you felt that it was linked to, I'm going to say, linked to serving in the church. A lot of
Mm,
times we get confused with that. We think because it's a spiritual purpose that it only supposed to be in the four walls of the church. That's not really
mm,
so. If we look at the ministry of Jesus, he never ministered inside the church, but yet he still fulfilled his purpose.
that part.
you know so with that, how do you use your gift for God? You are a gifted writer. That's a gift that I feel a lot of folks overlook. I think we need to be using our writers to make our church bulletins, to write the church announcements, give life to these things that are written down. So for you, how do you feel that you use this gift for God?
I definitely don't write announcements in church. So let me tell
But you
you
should.
something. I'll be
If I
honest.
ever get a church, you'll be
I'll
my
have
announcement
y'all
writer.
cackling. I'll probably have y'all cackling in the church pews reading his announcements. I'm probably definitely not the one to do that. I'm just too not mature enough. But no, it's funny because I don't. It's weird. I don't necessarily identify immediately as a writer anymore. Although I am, that is who I am like at all times. Even when I think about, doing safe space, right? Like hosting the show, I write my thoughts out, right? Like I think at one point you had referenced them as a monologue. Like I write out what it is I want to say, how I want to say it. Um, I do not take my words lightly in that sense. And so writing for me has always been a way in which I felt like I could most authentically communicate because I could really take the time to not just actively listen and then respond or contribute, but to think about what is it that I truly want to say and how do I want to say it. And especially if you add that next layer of, you know, whether it's delivering God's word or, just showing up in a way that my words can be healing, can be empowering, can do like all of these positive things in folks' life. That means that you have to feel that weight. You got to carry that weight.
Hmm.
And so, in terms of like how I use those gifts now and how they show up, it's interesting that I do a lot more speaking verbally now than I do necessarily writing like as a freelance journalist doing op-eds or doing these interviews and whatever else the case may be. But I guess this is a moment of it coming full circle and owning the fact that I am still a writer, and that was the gift that made room for so much of the work that I do now was because of my love of writing. And I started writing at a very early age, and it started with poetry. And from there, it kind of progressed into storytelling, and then it progressed into journalism, and then it progressed into writing scripts, whether it was for Nickelodeon or Fox or whatever else the case may be, and being a freelance journalist, and now being a radio show host. Writing has been that gift. Before anything else, I am a writer, and so how that gift shows up before I write or speak anything, it's always taking it to the Lord first. It's always like taking it to my creator and saying, what is it that you want me to say? What is the message that this particular audience needs to receive? Remove all of me and you know, fill your vessel, right? Me, fill me up with that which is required for you to be able to flow through me, and lead the way. I'm not. This ain't my thing. I say that all the time, even before I usually pray personally before I go on air. It's like, this ain't my boat. And when I say boat, like my platform, and say this isn't my boat. Okay, I'm just here to make sure ain't nothing capsizing. And I always pray that, let those who need to hear the message, let their ears be open, let their minds and hearts be open, let them be able to receive it, and let me use me in such a way where they can receive it, right? Where they can have direct access to it, and have your way. And so the same kind of prayer that I pray before I go on air to speak is exactly the process I go through whenever I'm preparing to write. So I think what I have really come to learn about purpose, especially when it comes to writing, is that it's not so much about striving for this moment or this pinnacle um, of fulfillment. It's in the everyday. It's how you show up and how you use the gifts and skills that you have every single day, in the personal and your friendships and your family, but also, yeah, in your professional and your livelihood and all of those kinds of things. Like, that is where your purpose lies. It is in the mundane. It is
Mm,
in the day to day. Those things that you underestimate and don't know that sticks with people, that helps them to better understand or define who you are. That is how your purpose ultimately is able to show up and to be understood and to be defined. It's in what you do every single day and how you use those gifts every single day. And I've used like my gift of writing, um, for folks that don't pay me anything, that aren't clients. And they're like, I need you to be my angry translator. I need you to help me send this letter to whoever that is really important to me, and I want to rekindle this relationship with them. Like, that's part of my purpose too. It's not just tied to this. Oh, I believe I'm the Oprah of my generation. No, it's so much smaller than that. I think, than the big picture that we always strive for. It's way more pal- palpable and touchable than that.
yeah, it is. It's so much more. Which leads me to this question: was it hard for you to recognize this gift? Past the writing, just the gift of being creative in general. That's not how the Bible puts it, but that is a gift. Was that hard for you to recognize?
I think a lot of it was hard for me to recognize because first of all, that's not something that you're really taught to recognize, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem when it comes to our education system. I think that's a problem when it comes to the way in which we view the contributions and the value of Black boys and Black girls, and Black children in general. Um, I think there's a few different layers to that. So it definitely wasn't something that I immediately valued or recognized. I think it wasn't until I really started doing business
Mm.
that I started to like understand my value, and I started to really like take a step back and say, wait a minute, I, my values, my ideas are worth something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what I'm bringing to the table is worth something. And that shout out to Google, like, whoever's on the call or at the table, I can likely Google what your position is and get an idea of what kind of money you're making. And if I'm at this table with you and the suggestions you offer ain't matching the dollar amount that's on your position, let me make sure I'm not undervaluing myself. Because if this is what they're paying for that, you're not gonna pay me what I'm worth. You're gonna pay me what you're able to. And so I think definitely, like, the businesswoman, the hustler in me, and I say hustling, I say that in a positive, like, I think it often gets a negative connotation, but I say that from a positive standpoint. Like, my mother is a business owner. My mother is an entrepreneur. My father is now an entrepreneur. My grandmother was an entrepreneur and a founder of a nonprofit. Like, this is in my lineage. And
Mhm.
so some of the mindset that I have when I've had to come to certain tables is like watching folks who built something out of nothing and served their communities and, you know what I mean, like better positioned our families. And so knowing the blood, sweat, and tears that I put into it, like it me undervaluing or underestimating my worth, that doesn't help any of us. That doesn't help Black women. That doesn't help my children, my young daughters to understand how to value themselves. That doesn't give glory, honor, and respect to the shoulders that I stand on. It doesn't do any of that. So I'll start high, negotiate lower, but you gonna pay me what I'm worth.
Yeah.
And so I think that for me was like on the business side where I really started to develop a better understanding and more confidence in not settling when it came to my gifts and talents, and knowing that I really am, dynamic and what I bring to the table. And that, especially, I think what's something that's really valued right now is authenticity and being able to stand at multiple intersections,
Mm.
and industries, identities, etc. And so, just knowing that I really am who I say I am, and I can really do exactly what I said I could do. You show me that scope of work, and I can deliver for you. I'm not gonna, uh, you know, over promise and under deliver. I'm gonna do what I said I can do, and we'll take it from there. But I'm not taking no shortcuts, no handouts. Pay me what I'm worth. I think that the business side, the entrepreneurial side of me really gave me that foundation that I needed, that rock I needed to be able to stand on and say, like, no, my gifts are worth something. My value, my talent is worth something. And being a millennial, I'll add real quick, just being a millennial, having watched a lot of baby boomers go through, the housing burst, get laid off, like all of these different things. I think for a lot of us, we just no longer felt like uh attached to these corporations and these companies, these businesses. It was like, y'all don't really care. We're replaceable, right? Like, we're like, I watched you lay off my mom. I watched you lay off my folks. Like, and thankfully my mom had that entrepreneurial side of her, but everybody else did not. And so I think there's definitely this approach that some folks perceive from millennials as not taking a job seriously, or not valuing a position, where I'm gonna be honest, for us is like, I'm not giving you the best of me and my years and my talent, knowing that at any given point in time, for whatever reason, if you want to cut me off, you'll cut me off. If you want to lay me off, you'll lay me off. Like, no, I'm not. We're not doing that no more. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. We doing business differently now. And a lot of us are independent contractors. And part of that is because of how we saw y'all treat the folks who came before us. And we said, no more. You won't do that. We'll set up our own LLCs. We'll set up our own, independent contracting entities and all these other things. And forget y'all pay us. We're not doing this with y'all. So, yeah.
No, no, that's good. I'm happy that you recognize your gift and all that. Know the purpose and the value of it, because it all comes to a T. It all makes the person. Uh, but we're here on Gospel Out for a second, so it would be wrong if I didn't take us all the way into the church house just for a hot second. You
Let's do it.
know, in this 21st century church, as I like to say, it's changing all the time. How church used to be for our parents isn't how it was for our grandparents. Definitely isn't how it was for our great grandparents, right? And now we're at this time and space where there are worship art ministries in churches. There's whole worship art pastors where they're more welcoming to folks who mime and praise dance and do spoken word and have oratorical contests and have poetry slams, right? The churches are doing these now. They have Christian cafes, being a person of the creative sense, right? Does that make you feel more welcomed to a church and even to use your gift? You know, we call them worship leaders, and but what if they got a person like you who is a radio host to lead worship one day, and by that I mean be the MC for the service, you know, folks who can use those types of gifts to enhance the ministry. How do you feel about that?
Ooh, so I think there's a few different sides of that, right? Um, because I think the church has to honestly contend with the fact that it is in many communities perceived as an entity that will exploit creative skills and talents and still not like empower or stand by a group. And I think like the LGBTQ community is a prime example. You know, I mean, you'll make folks the head of your musical ministries, and place them in position. You use the talents, but you won't like necessarily stand by them when it comes to human rights or something like that. So I think like the church, quite frankly, has got to deal with that mistrust that may exist, especially in the Black community. And that's just, I don't know where the church honestly as a whole stands on that, even in this moment. I think it depends. It varies church by church, you know, whatever. And so I think like if we're gonna ask that question, is like the question is really for the church. It's like what is okay? What are you willing to accept? For me, in direct response to your question of, would that make me more likely to attend a church? Seeing maybe someone like myself who's holding a position or bringing those kind of creative talents or energies. I think it would make me curious to see how they're running their ministries, and who's in leadership. I think that's the critical thinker in me, because at this point I have generations of family members, majority women, who have been pastors, ministers, etc., and I've watched them have to fight to hold those positions because they didn't think it was a woman's place. I've watched them have to fight to bring in creative, inject creative energy, whether it's through mime, whether it's through community outreach, right? The community ministry outreach, going out into the parks and holding concerts and doing these kinds of things, going outside the walls of the church. I've seen that fight and that pushback to stop it. And so I do feel encouraged when I see a lot of the younger generation of pastors and ministers, church leaders, who are carving out spaces for millennials, Gen Xers, etc., to be able to meet, especially young folks, where they're at. Because if you're trying to get somewhere new, you can't keep going about it the same old way. That's just, we know that. I think that's why, like, and I know we have different feelings about homeboys, but I think that's why for a lot of millennials, like Kirk Franklin was such a game changer in the way that we personally developed a relationship with Jesus, right? When we personally developed a relationship with our creator, it was because I, like, just speaking for myself, and growing up in a Baptist church and seeing my mom come up in leadership, or attempting to come up in leadership, because she was trying to answer her call, and the pushback that was happening, it turned me off from the church. And so to experience, on a creative side, someone like a Kurt Franklin, Donald Lawrence, all these folks who on the music side was just, it was undeniable. Well, I wanted to mime. I wanted to praise dance. I wanted to do all of these things. I wanted to help tell those stories. That was what I was passionate about, was helping to tell those stories. That really is powerful. And
Mm.
I think, like in anything else in life, when we think about our education system and how they're stripping, funding and resources for the arts and education. Like we know it, like it's been proven that arts are powerful, that they strengthen human connection, that they do all of these things, and the church is no different. And
Hmm.
so I think when we can have diversity and the way in which artistic skill sets are introduced to our ministerial approaches and strategies, that it can make all the difference. It can make all the difference. And I think um, I would be encouraged to see basically what would be someone crossover, right? Someone to see someone from radio cross over and show up at my church hosting an event, or singing a praise song, or like playing a part that way. I think as a young person that would definitely be like, wait a minute, is that Miss Rita doing that? Like, oh, wait a minute, oh snap. Like I think that could be very powerful. I do. I think that could be very powerful. Wouldn't necessarily be a game changer for me, um, after all that I've experienced. No, I think it would have to be not just this one time occurrence. It would have to be like the church walking the walk and talking the talk, and staying consistent in that, and showing that this is really what we are dedicated to, and you really are welcome here.
No, no, I hear you. I hear you, and I feel you. And my experiences has been I have seen a radio personality host some church events. My radio mentor, she's an evangelist in the church, and she go from church to church hosting musicals, concerts, preaching words. So I think, like you said, it is a game changer for some. But for some folks, just like yourself, they want to see some constant change, changing there for them to just be feel a little more welcome. But before I get you out of here, you got one last question. What is your words of advice for another young sister or brother who may be watching this and they're creative? They may feel like you. They love dancing and they've been sat down from dancing, or they love singing and they can't sing anymore, or they may just be a writer like you at heart and they don't know what to do with that. What are your words of encouragement for them?
Just don't stop creating. Don't stop creating, and don't there is more than one way for your purpose to manifest, right? It doesn't have to be through this one way. And I think sometimes that's where we mess ourselves up, is that we get this picture in our mind of what our purpose is supposed to look like and what our impact is supposed to look like in the world. And if it doesn't look like that, we don't know what to do. If it doesn't look like that, now we're thrown into this cycle of despair. If it doesn't look like that, then it must not be God working. Like don't put God in a box just because you put your purpose in a box. That's two different things, but we don't do that. Don't limit God in that way, because first of all, God never intended for you to be limited. Whatever vision you carved out in your mind, you got to acknowledge that that was influenced and shaped by only that which you have been exposed to. So it's even that is limited in your understanding. And that's, God's ways are not like our ways. God's thoughts are not like our thoughts. So in terms of your creativity and purpose, stay open, stay curious to how they can show up and present themselves in their lives and through you, right? Maybe it's not the season for you to be a writer. Maybe it's the season for you to explore what it looks like to show up as, for me, like this radio show host. Maybe even still using writing though, because mind you, I write I don't like coming on air and not having my script together, like, or at least not having my talking points together, right? So I'm still using my gift. It just looks very different than me writing you know 500 to 1500 word article for a news outlet, right? Those look very different, but it still gets to the core of my gift and who I am. And so in terms of your creativity, do not limit the way in which it is able to show up in your life, the way in which it flows through you and how it reaches other people. Just stay curious to how might this continue to show itself in my life. And do not fear those moments where you're being challenged to explore it in a new way, right? That's okay. See what you can do with it, push the limits, test it, see what feels comfortable, what doesn't. Like this will all help you to further develop, not only as a creative, but as a child of God. And why would you not explore the many talents, gifts, and ways in which God has blessed you? You know. No.
Listen, that was a good way to go out right there. So, for those that may not know you and be listening to you for the first time, just now seeing you, how can folks connect with you and your work?
I mean, y'all don't. It's just, follow Kayla J, KALAJ underscore music nerd on Instagram. But no, I am Sincerely Syreeta, SYREETA, over on Instagram. And then, of course, I host Safe Space right here on WURD Radio, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. You can catch myself and Kayla J holding it down there, usually cackling and just acting a fool, but also having some really dope conversations. And at least with, well, not just with that show, with everything I do, the goal is always to empathize with the journeys of others, so that we can best empower each other to all evolve into our best selves, not only for ourselves and for our families and our communities, but for greater humanity. So empathize, empower, and evolve. That's what I'm about. And, no matter which platform you may find me on, whether it's, social media or word radio, that's what it's about.
She's being very humble, you guys. She also has a side show with her best friend called Boss Besties. She's a writer, which we've been talking about. And she has multiple things out and published. So if you just type in her name, Sincerely Syreeta, you'll be able to find all of the things that she has done, any upcoming things that she's doing, because she wants to be super humble right now. But I appreciate that. Sincerely Syreeta, thank you so much for joining me today on Kayla J's Gospel Hour.
Thank you, Kayla J. We got it done.
We got it
Yay!
done. We got it done. And on that note, folks, it's time to get back to the music right here on WURD. This has been the Purpose Series. Remember, we're continuing this all month long, so stay tuned to learn more about purpose and to hear from folks who are fulfilling their purpose right here on earth. Keep it locked right here. WURD.